Hello, beautiful people, wherever you are. I hope you are safe, well nourished, and feeling loved. Where you're watching this video from. Today, I'm coming to you to bring you some information and updates. I've been working with Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement, founded by Mocha Jasmine Johnson and her husband Noah Johnson. Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement has been doing some impactful work in Athens over the last decade or more. And today we are bringing you some updates about our housing advocacy and policy work. And so I want to read to some documents to you for people who may not be able to access or understand some of the legal language that we have in actual policy. I want to talk about the policy as well as the ordinance that we are getting ready to launch and promote and advocate for passing on a local level to help alleviate some of the housing crisis we have. Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement has been working on this since April of 2025. And so here we go, with no further delay. I'm Broderick Flanagan, of course. I was born and raised here in Athens, Georgia. And I'm gonna start off by reading the ordinance itself and kind of explaining a little bit about what some of the sections are. And so the title goes, an ordinance to establish housing habitability, enforcement, tenant protections, housing security programs, funding authorizations, equity initiatives, and administrative structures necessary to promote safe and affordable housing in Athens, Clarke County, and for other purposes. Article 1, legislative findings and purpose. Now I'm going to be calling out some numbers, and these numbers correspond or relate to actual numbers in the policy document. In legal policy documents, they are numbered, the different sections, and different things are highlighted or designated by numbers. And so when you hear me call out 1.1, 1.2, so on and so forth, I'm calling out each section and reading it verbatim. All right. So Article 1, legislative findings and purpose. 1.1 relates to clean and safe housing is a human right, establishing that. 1.2, the local government has the power to enforce violations of that right. 1.3, Athens, Clarke County is facing a housing crisis stated by the Affordable Housing Investment Strategy that was created in 2023. 1.4, Section 1.4, this section points out the historic and racialized ways in which housing has not been equal. 1.5, this ordinance recognizes individuals who rely on workforce housing, including but not limited to teachers, first responders, healthcare assistants, retail employees, and service sector professionals and workers. 1.6, as of now, certain tools like rent control, mandatory inclusionary zoning, are not allowed in the state of Georgia due to state laws. This policy is requesting the local government of Athens, Clarke County to urge the lawmakers at the state level to grant local governments the ability to create these policies in order to create more affordable housing and stabilize rents for rent-burdened residents. 1.7, the purpose of this ordinance is to make sure housing is safe and clean, give tenants clear protections and ways to file complaints, support programs that help people stay housed, expand opportunities for wealth building, strengthen Athens Clarke County's ability to manage these efforts, keep housing affordable over a long term, and promote fair and equal housing while following the law. Article 2 is a definitions section. I'm not going to read through all of the definitions, but this actual section defines some terms used throughout this ordinance/policy. These terms mean the same thing on the local level as well as the federal level. Article 3, this section is pertaining to housing security programs. 3.1 reads, this policy allows Housing and Community Development Department, HCD, to create Second Chance Rental Assistance Program. We use the acronym SCRAP, the SCRAP, which stands for Second Chance Rental Assistance Program, funded through the Local Housing Fund. The purpose of SCRAP is to make housing more accessible, prevent homelessness, and stabilize households. SCRAP may provide security deposit assistance, first month's rent assistance, case management and housing navigation, and outreach and incentives to landlord participants. This policy creates the SCRAP program but is not required. Funding will be decided year to year through the Clark County budgeting process. Section 3.2, this policy will also create the Rental Fee Relief Program, RFRP. This section refers to existing state law around security deposits, and the RFRP shall assist renters who face excessive fees. RFRP funds may be used for rental application fees, administrative fees, excessive non-refundable charges, emergency or hardship-related rental costs. 3.3. To prevent displacement, preserve affordability, and slow down predatory out-of-town investment in rental properties, Athens-Clarke County shall expand the use of its acquisition strike fund. The funds may support the purchase of rental properties for preservation by nonprofits or mission-based developers, rehab of older units, and long-term affordability terms. Many nonprofits and universities are not required to pay taxes. This policy maintains that payment in lieu of taxes, or the acronym PILOT, P-I-L-O-T, which is what payment in lieu of taxes stands for, agreements will be voluntary, and that ACC or Athens-Clarke County can encourage but not require these places to enter these agreements. Any pilot revenue may be dedicated to affordable housing programs. The local government may direct HCD, or Housing and Community Development, to study if it is possible to dedicate a portion of Clark County funded capital budgets, example given, infrastructure projects, towards affordable housing in alignment with legal limits. HCD, or Housing and Community Development, is authorized to study whether impact fee style linkage fees may be adopted under Georgia development fee statutes. Linkage fees are charges developers pay when they build new market rate buildings based off of impact on the environment or the local community. The money collected is used to create affordable housing. Instead of requiring affordable units in the actual building or construction, the program collects fees and uses them elsewhere. These fees started with commercial projects but are now used in more places, especially where laws limit other types of affordable housing rules. Section 3.4, ACC will use a low-income housing tax credit, or LIHTC, program. The program will train nonprofits and small developers to facilitate partnerships and provide technical assistance and support pre-development activities that enable competitive LIHTC applications. And so basically the low-income housing tax credit gives developers a tax break if they partner with a housing developer that is creating affordable housing or including affordable housing in their overall development, a certain percentage. 3.5, this policy will support housing stability for seniors aged 65 plus years living at or below defined income thresholds. The following section defines the legal framework of how this can be done. Athens-Clarke County should encourage the creation of a new homestead exemption to support low-income seniors aged 65 and older. The local government can also simplify the application process through the tax assessor's office and promote awareness of senior property tax relief programs. Article 4, tenant protections and habitability enforcement. This policy creates the Housing Habitability Enforcement Unit. This enforcement unit will have the ability to enforce housing safety standards, conduct inspections of rental properties in response to complaints, issue violations and actions that must be taken to fix them, work with the county attorney to provide civil enforcement and court actions, and keep records showing whether each inspected rental property follows the rules. The enforcement unit can enter rental homes when the law allows, check the most serious problem first, and go back later to make sure the problems were fixed. Section 4.2, Athens Clarke County will create a housing mediation program that is separate from code enforcement. The purpose of this program will help landlords and tenants settle disagreements, help people make agreements about repairs, payment plans, lease issues, or maintenance problems, and help reduce the need to go to court for evictions. Taking part in mediation is optional and does not stop the enforcement unit from doing inspections or giving penalties. 4.3, ACC will create and maintain a 24/7 housing hotline to take complaints about housing safety or landlords. This hotline will offer multilingual options, allow complaints to be made anonymously when possible, refer cases directly to the enforcement unit for inspection or investigation, and will keep confidential records of calls received. The Housing and Community Development Department will reach out to the public to make sure tenants know about this hotline. Section 4.4, a landlord goes against this ordinance if within 6 months of a tenant within 6 months after a tenant has made a complaint to ACC or taken part in mediation or enforcement, they evict the tenant, raise their rent, refuse to renew the lease, harass the tenant, or reduce services. A landlord can prove that they are not retaliating by clearly showing a good, fair reason for an action they are taking. Penalties for failing to follow this policy can include fines of up to $1,000 per violation, temporary suspension of any real estate or any rental licensing system set up by Athens Clarke County, or the case can be sent to court for enforcement. This section adds to but does not replace any solutions available under Georgia state law. Article 5 relates to emergency housing crisis response. 5.1 reads, there will be an emergency rental assistance sub-fund, or ERAS fund, that will be used to prevent evictions and homelessness. The ERAS fund can help with pay due rent payments, emergency relocation, past due utility bills, and short-term rental assistance due to job loss, illness, or unexpected hardship. The Housing and Community Development Department will portion the ERAS fund to partnership with the Athens Housing Authority and local nonprofit agencies that help provide stable housing. 5.2, Athens Clarke County is allowed to create contracts with nonprofits to provide temporary or traditional housing, deliver wraparound services such as job training, mental health support, case management, and other things, and to make sure the program helps renters who are struggling the most and people who are close to losing their first homes. Article 6, this section deals with housing equity, preservation, and anti-displacement. 6.1 reads, there will be a Fair Housing Office, FHO, created within the Housing and Community Development Department. The Fair Housing Office will be allowed to receive, investigate, and process complaints of housing discrimination under federal, state, and local law, coordinate with HUD, or Housing and Community Development, the Georgia Commission on Equal Opportunity, and nonprofit partners, do paired tests to check whether people are being treated unfairly in housing, issue reports, and send cases to be prosecuted or handled by the proper authorities, provide training to landlords, tenants, property managers, and developers, and collect and publish fair housing data for the county. 6.2, To reduce long-standing gaps in home ownership and wealth, ACC, Athens Clarke County, may create programs for helping first-generation or low-income homebuyers with down payment costs, providing training on managing money and finances, giving support and guidance to small or historically underserved housing developers. Following the legally safer terminology guidance, eligibility will be based on factors like where someone lives, their income, or how systems have affected their community. For example, living in underserved neighborhoods or having high housing cost burdens, not based off of a person's race. 6.3. Athens Clarke County may give money, land, or technical help to community land trusts, CLTs, help community land trusts buy properties through the Acquisition Strike Fund, and require the community land trust homes to stay affordable for the long term. 6.4. When the county gives public money, discounted land, tax breaks, or similar incentives, Athens Clarke County may require that at least 25% of the units be kept affordable for low-income residents, the homes stay affordable for at least 30 years, and that developers provide yearly reports showing who lives there and whether they are following the rules. 6.5. The county finds that rent stabilization helps prevent people from being pushed out of their homes and keep neighborhoods stable. Requiring developers to include affordable units is a common tool used in other places to support fair development, and Georgia law currently blocks local governments from using these tools. Note, nothing in this ordinance should be understood as creating rent control or requiring developers to include affordable units. However, Athens Clarke County officially asked Georgia state lawmakers to change state law so that local governments can use rent stabilization and inclusionary zoning. Athens Clarke County plans to use these tools if state law ever allows it and tells the county manager to share this position with the local state legislators. Article 7. Administration, Oversight, and Reporting. 7.1. The Housing and Community Development Department is responsible for carrying out all the programs created in this ordinance, handling enforcement, mediation, data reporting, and community outreach, and creating administrative rules that follow this ordinance. 7.2. A public advisory board on housing equity and habitability. The advisory board will be created. The advisory board will include at least 2 tenants with lived experience, 1 representative of a nonprofit housing organization, 1 fair housing expert, 1 small landlord, 1 member with legal or housing policy expertise, and any additional members needed decided by the mayor and commission. The advisory board will look over the program data and enforcement trends, suggest ways to improve policies, hold public listening sessions, and help with outreach and education. 7.3. The Housing and Community Development Department will publish an annual report that includes the number, type, and results of habitability complaints, inspections completed and violations fixed, how much rental assistance programs are used, affordable housing that has been preserved or created, any racial, geographic, or economic gaps observed, and progress on the advisory board's recommendations. The last section is Article 8. Article 8 is titled Effective Date and Servability. 8.1 reads, this ordinance will go into effect, and then there's a blank because we want to get the ordinance passed or adopted by the local government, and we don't know what that date is yet, so that's why that is blank. So it reads, 8.1 says, this ordinance will go into effect on, then there's a blank, after it is adopted and published according to the law. 8.2 says, if any part of this ordinance is found to be invalid or cannot be enforced, the rest of the ordinance will still remain in effect. And so that is the totality of the ordinance that I've just read in plain English. There is a legal language version that has more of the legalese language and explains some of these things in terms of compliance and ways in which the government can operate. And again, these are policy ideas or goals or suggestions. And so we expect that the local government will change or tweak some of this. And again, we as a community should have a voice in what those changes and tweaks look like. But we can collaboratively, you know, begin to mold this into what we want to see as a community to address the housing crisis. And so this is just a platform or a starting point, a base that we will go by. And next, I want to read this petition that we have started, or that we want, in order to show support for this for residents in Athens, Clarke County. We want to make sure that we get this out to all of the 10 commission districts so we can show how many residents in each district support these ideas and this policy. Again, many hands make light work, and we can't do this work alone. Athens Anti-Discrimination movement is taking charge. People like myself and Mocha and others are leading the charge. We definitely need your help, though. And so we have translated some of this into Spanish, and we will translate this particular part into Spanish as well to get it to some of those populations and those people. So the title says, Petition to Support Athens, Georgia Housing Policy. There's a subtitle that says, Housing is a Human Right, and we must act accordingly. The first paragraph reads, Athens has a housing crisis like many other places across the country. Uncontrolled rent hikes, vanishing access to housing for ordinary and marginalized people, inequitable zoning law applications, and lack of policy guardrails are making housing protections more urgent than ever. As we continue to move forward towards a better future and prosperity for all, let us be reminded that our continued inaction and bare minimum low-hanging fruit responses will continue to deepen the hole we should all want to climb out of. We are asking like-minded residents and organizations in Athens, Georgia, to make a commitment to ensuring the policies presented in this document are passed and enforced at the state and local levels. Then there's a list of bullet points that highlight some of the policies. Bullet point 1 is rent control, then source of income, non-discrimination, criminal history, non-discrimination, zoning changes, i.e. overlay districts. The next bullet point is inclusionary zoning. And then the last one is expanding the homestead exemption for seniors at a certain income level. Now, these things should not be considered radical or controversial. To undo historical harms, we need policies that set us on a path to course correct. We, the people, would love to have a certain number of signatures in each of the 10 commission districts in Athens, Clarke County. We humbly ask that you sign this petition and share it with at minimum 5 of your neighbors. Together, we can address this housing crisis. Also, be mindful that we may have to come to collect a wet signature on paper if the local government requires it for the petition to be accepted by them. Please see the attached links to read the proposed policy ideas. There are 2 versions of the document, one in legal terms and jargon, and one in plain language so everyone who is literate can understand. Then it says, be on the lookout for the Spanish and audio versions of this document and the ordinances. And so that's how the actual petition reads. And we are doing the audio version right here, right now. And then this is being also translated into Spanish. Then there's a link to the district maps of Athens, Clarke County, so people can look up their address, because on the petition it will ask for your address to show which commission district you live in. And then you have
I wasn't recording. Y'all recording?
Yeah, it's recording.
we can cut that part out. So it has the district maps on here. There's a link to it so you can see what district you live in. And then it has both of the ordinance linked in plain English, as well as the legalese ordinance. And so we ask that you sign this and share this with your neighbors and other residents who you think will be on board. And we look forward to mobilizing around this crisis, this housing crisis that we have here, and your continued support for Athens Anti-Discrimination Movement. Just one more thing I want to let you all know. We are working on some housing initiatives where we're doing some fundraising, and we have goals to help families that are in crisis in the immediate. We are doing these things called rent parties, where we're partnering with different local event spaces like Authentic Brewing and Hinder Shots and others. There will be others. You can also host a rent party to raise funds at your home. These funds will be used to actually support people who are facing homelessness or experiencing homelessness, and also to prevent people from being evicted from their homes. And so please support this work and give where you can. You can find this information on AADM's website. Thank you.